send you a recording through the big website platform. Send you a recording through the I'm hearing myself. Hang on. Let me just mute that. Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Big BAM, as Susan affectionately called it, and it's kind of caught on. That's big by big applications in movement. And I'm Chris Morita Clancy. I am here with our, our speakers who created videos for the big. We have Marlo Fisken. Marlo, give a hi. Susan Lowell de Solórzano. Hi, Susan. Kamila Moravcová. Hi, Kamila. Bruna Petito. Mary Bond. Now, we do have another speaker, Nuno Gusmão, who's submitted a video. He is unable to be with us today, so there's a bit of a change in how this is and who's running it. I'll be running the panel discussion. But if you've watched his video, you can communicate with him on the big website in his personal discussion space. Okay, so BIG stands for Biotensegrity Interest Group, and it all started in 2009 in St. Malo, France, with Daniel Claude Martin and Steve Levin spearheading this Biotensegrity Interest Group. Now, you might have noticed that this BIG is not a marketing campaign. It's nonprofit and non-commercial, and that's part of what BIGs are. So like all BIGs, this gathering, this event is dedicated to the study and learning of biotensegrity in a community of equals. Part of the biotensegrity paradigm is heterarchy. So this is not a top down, although somebody will step up and take the lead and then step back. This, as I was saying, is a non-commercial event. And so BIGs are cost sharing. And I thought that we could host this whole thing for free just using the Embodied Biotensegrity platform and the Zoom and everything. Well, we've had so many people register that we have possibly not enough room for everyone to attend. So the donations, people were given the option of donating to the Biotensegrity Archive. And here I was happily writing thank you emails saying 100% of your donations are going to be going to the Biotensegrity Archive. If you got that early email, yes, your donations specifically are going to the archive. We did take the expense of upgrading the Zoom. So thank you, people who noticed that change and donated. I know that $50 was donated right away. Okay, so let's get going. We're going to start Jason, will you please put the link to the speaker bios in the chat for us? Rather than read everybody's bio, we're going to do a really fast lightning round, as we say, just to give you a bit of a background. So I'm Chris Morita Clancy, and I was introduced to biotensegrity through my yoga teacher, Joya Irwin, who brought first to us Anatomy Trains, and then Steve's classic DVD was actually on a disc, introducing biotensegrity to us. So, Suzanne, how did you get introduced to biotensegrity? And what is your practice?
Yeah, so I've been studying Tai Chi and related internal martial arts since 1983, and sometime around 2006, 7 maybe, a guest teacher, Sean Lang, was in town doing a weekend seminar. He suggested we all get anatomy trains. He was also an acupuncturist, and he felt that the channel meridian system of Chinese medicine corresponded to what he was seeing in anatomy trains.
Okay, lightning round. Pass it
Okay.
on.
Okay, I'll throw it over to you, Nuno. Good to see you.
Hello, thank you. So I met Biotensegrity through the Tensegrity parties, recorded Tensegrity parties, um, and I was instantly engaged with the knowledge that was conveyed there. I totally identify my work with my work. I knew it could explain a lot of things that I couldn't explain otherwise, and I just stood here firmly. Uh, Marlo.
Hello from Iceland. I was introduced to biotensegrity, I think, through Susan's book, possibly. It's maybe the first time I encountered the word, yes, she was here, and then found my way to this online community.
Okay, and your practice for people who did not attend the big, we've had people sign up
Ah,
later. We can have people watching on YouTube.
yes, I have been teaching movement for 27 years and teach people to find flow
Nice.
through rolling on the floor, climbing poles, or moving with other people or themselves outside.
Great. Thanks, Marlo. Who do you pass it to?
Bruna.
Hello, good to be here. My background is dancer. I was a dancer, and also I'm a somatic practitioner. And I start looking for biotensegrity in the moment that I had more answers and more questions for my answers. And in the YouTube with the tea parties was the moment that I found biotensegrity. Kamila.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kamila. My main background is in physiotherapy. And I first got introduced to tensegrity through a rolfing teacher in about 2008. I thought I get it immediately. And then in about 2019, I somehow attended event where I heard Susan, Steve, and Graham speak. And that was my second uh, start of deeper dive into this topic where I understood I have no clue what's going on. Mary.
Yeah, hi everyone. I studied with Ida Rolf in 1969, and in those days, tensegrity was in the kind of background of the conversation, although they never really followed through with it explicitly. I think my first brush with this group or this pursuit was during the awakening to the fascial research in the early 2000s, and biotensegrity was kind of a sidebar that intrigued me. So I looked at it for a little while, and then it was COVID and the tea parties, and I just got sucked in and realized that this work is giving me much more grounding in what I already do. So it's wonderful.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, so for those of you who are on the panel, I'm going to give you a bit of a heads up. Our next question is, what is biotensegrity? I'm going to ask you to give me a simple, non-jargony answer to the question. You don't have to all respond, but as you think about that, because man, is it ever hard to define in a simple way. As you think about that, I'm going to read to everybody from Steve and from Graham, okay? And then when I finish, you can just unmute, or I am going to call you Susan, just a warning. So in 1975, Stephen M. Levin, who was an orthopedic surgeon at the time, had his aha moment, and he connected tensegrity to the way as a solution to how the body actually behaves, how we can explain that, how we can understand that. And in 1980, he presented this idea to the North American Academy of Manipulative Medicine, where we have his first writing about biotensegrity, which is a word that he coined Susan and I were trying to figure it out. We don't have the exact date. I don't believe that Steve is here. I've told he's traveling right now. In the early 2000s, probably. And he coined the word biotensegrity, bio from living or life, and tensegrity from tensegrity, to extend tensegrity force vector concept into biology specifically as being a separate, separate, a field of study that, yes, has tensegrity in it, but is more specific than general tensegrity. And as you guys think about your response to my answer, I'll just read to everybody from Graham Scar's website. The biotensegrity concept is different to what has gone before because it is based on the fundamental rules of physics first, from which everything else is derived. It recognizes that complex living structures are the result of interactions between some basic self-organizing principles, and that nature's strategy for design is already built into the dynamic architecture of the system. It's a principle of structural organization that extends from the smallest of molecules to the complete organism and uses the simplest of models to better understand their complex dynamics. The biotensegrity model considers the relationship between every part of an organism and the mechanical system that integrates them into a complete functional unit. It's a simple reevaluation of anatomy as a network of structures under tension and others that are compressed, parts that pull things together and others that keep them apart. Basic physics, that's from Tensegrity and Biology .co.uk, and I'm going to open this question about how can we describe biotensegrity simply. All of that takes a long time to understand. Yes, we can't have a single sentence that somebody's going to understand completely, but Susan, what do you say when you meet someone new?
If they don't know what tensegrity is, they're not going to understand the word biotensegrity. Biotensegrity is investigating what we can learn about biology, viruses to vertebrates, by looking at and learning from tensegrities and related models and concepts. So we end up getting into system science and complexity and soft matter and a bunch of other things as a result of that.
Yes, thank you. So, for any other panel member, how would you describe either biotensegrity or tensegrity to someone who's new to the concept?
I'll go.
Thank you.
So I carry this most of the time with me to avoid the situation that Susan just mentioned. And to put it as simply as possible, for me, it's different way of building that is basically understanding how this is built, how this works, applied to everything living.
Yeah, nice. Having the model makes it so much easier, doesn't it? Does anybody else want to say anything about this before we
Yes, I can go. Just I study biotensegrity, but I'm mostly a user of the concepts derived from biotensegrity. So I usually explain that when people ask me, I say it's the lens that I use to do my work nowadays. I don't go into details because it's, as Susan said, if people don't know what the tensegrity is, it will be a mess of an explanation. So it's basically my lens to view the world, the living world, and my work.
Yeah, and that leads to the fact that all of us here are movers, whether we're facilitating movement or not. We're moving in our own bodies. I believe that most people here are in some sort of facilitation capacity or a healing capacity, or you're healers. So what about this question of can I know my answer, but can we bring the biotensegrity lens to our work and have people benefit from that without even ever mentioning biotensegrity or the concepts that underlie it until or if, unless people actually are interested and start asking questions? Marlo, I'm curious about your thoughts about this one.
I think that the model helps explain what we see in exquisite movers that other language has failed to express. And that was particularly what drew me to it. Just weren't words or explanations for how people could be so well organized and coordinated and adaptive through the language that I was exposed to for learning ways to talk about the body or explain movement. So it offers permission to stop trying to make sense out of the body through pieces, parts, language that you might have been exposed to,
Yeah.
and that's really the gift or the benefit of it, without using any words that people haven't heard before. Hopefully,
Yeah. Nice. Nice. You are, you do have a way with language that I have always appreciated. Mary, you spoke about, tensegrity was in the background, it was in the system. And when you're working with folks, um, how do you balance this, bringing in biotensegrity, not addressing it all? What's your personal approach? I guess it depends on the person, but
Yeah, excuse me, just one sec.
oh,
Little distraction there. Yeah, so the way that it was in the background is that the Rolfing protocols famously centers around the plumb line of gravity. But in fact, in order to free the body to move comfortably and adaptably, Ida Rolf was really using concepts that she called span and tone. And that both of those, I think, apply to what we think of as pretension in the soft tissue system. And so to balance the tensions in the body made it possible for the center line to be centered and not sort of broken and twisted and so on. So it was the spatial dynamics and the amount of sort of omnidirectional tensioning that allows, in my opinion, the center line to emerge. And then it's not necessarily wedded to the floor. You can fly around with it still there inside you. So the Rolf people have used different language for all of this, but I think it's the same thing. And that early paper that was written, 1975 seemed to be a big year for tensegrity to hit the newsstands.
yeah.
There was a paper written by a Rolfer about tensegrity as a possible explanation for why the structural integration process was effective at all. And just wonderful thing to think about.
Thank you. Okay, Bruna's camera's off, so I'm gonna move on right now. But first, Joe Pristula wrote, I always say biomechanics compares humans with machines. Biotensegrity draws similarities between all living things and how they move, even things without nervous systems or brains. Yeah, thanks, Joe. So we're going to open up this discussion for other participation, other participants in a little while. But first, let's continue with the panel discussion. And I wanted to just point out the fact that the fascia community, fascial science, is really helping people to see and understand the ubiquity of continuity in living organisms. And many of us here were at the Fascia Research Congress was it August? And one of the things we noticed attending a lot of the workshops was we tend to talk about wholeness, but then so often turn to the practice and there's focusing on parts, engaging these muscles, et cetera, et cetera. Now, watching all of your videos, I know all of you in other areas as well. One of the things that was common in our approach is making that leap so that you are bringing in wholeness. You're bringing in this continuity, not just in the way that you're thinking about the body, but also in how you're approaching movement. And what really jumped out for me is not just limiting that to the body as a system, but so many of you talked about the greater system. Mary, you talked about ecological psychology and that interaction with the floor. Kamila, I just love that sitting on the chair and she feels the earth and in doing so that feeling, that inner listening, the whole body responds. Bruna just disappeared, but she was talking about, oh, there you are, Bruna. Great. Bruna was talking about the relationship and the way we use the ball, the prop. Just a sec. Oh no, you already are a co-host. Luckily, that stays on and I don't have to worry about it. So you're inviting people, all of you, to dialogue with the environment. And so that system of this body becomes a larger system. And I'm a swimmer, so that's something you really feel because you're not usually in the water. So it's more tangible almost. So I'm wondering, who can talk to me about props? Bruna, you were talking about props and how we can use props to connect us to this greater system, or how we often see, excuse me, who can talk to me about props we often see in various practices and how biotensegrity changes how we think about them and about our approach to practice. Now, Nuno, I don't know how long you're going to be able to be here today. Are you interested? I think people would love to hear about about one of the Pilates props and how you're using those in a way that is different from before.
Hmm. Thank you, Chris. I just let me mention Bruna's detail on using tools and props, and she really clarifies the notion that in biotensegrity we don't use a prop for a specific outcome. We use the prop to as a way to see how the body responds to a need imposed by the prop. So the prop, I see, or I understood that Bruna used the prop. We use the props as teasers for for the dialogue, the internal dialogue that the human being can do. It can be just the environment, like as you said about the water. It's also a prop that it's a different mean that triggers a need for a special organization in yourself, Chris. But the ball or the kettlebell or the all the equipment that we use in Pilates, they have been, in my understanding, misunderstood as ways to develop specific characteristics in the body, strength, um, adduction, abduction, shoulder, so function of parts, while the springs and being springs, and we talk about springs, about tension and compression, uh, uh, they really can call for the body's capacity to adapt with its own spring quality, internal spring quality. The tension the internal tension compression that reorganizes, as Mary said, to find a new center, to find a way to deal with the need imposed by life. But these being a lab situation, a session, a class, where we condition certain aspects of life so that some other aspects in real life can emerge in a different organized way. I'm not said good or bad. It's usually good, but it's just a new way of organizing. So for me, tools were really well described by Bruna's work presentation as features to enhance the need of adaptation of the body.
Thanks, Nuno. Go ahead, Bruna.
What I think what biotensegrity gives to me in the way that I look at the body and choose movement is my question of what I want to do with the person. And that's why I think the tools is something that we can work with this lens, not only the tools, but specific the tools, I think is something that is very helpful, because in the moment that we put other thing in the body with the mechanical lens, our first approach is I'm doing something with someone to have some result. And when we start to dive in biotensegrity, for me, it is an opportunity to understand that we are not doing nothing with the body. We allowing the body to self-organize. And specific about the ball that I use in the video, I start realize with my clients and myself that if we stop to use the tool something to resolve something, we get the opportunity of the ball. We have the opportunity of use the ball as a teaser, our communication, and this help us to understand that is so much more that we can do with some balls or some other tools. And help me also shift my mind that I'm not trying to manage the body of something that I need to resolve. So it's always, for me, it's always about my goal as a movement practitioner, my strategies that is not trying to do something in the other, but choosing like how I'm going to approach this lens and this concept. And when the tool comes in the game and I'm going to invite someone to play, the tool is just one facilitated to sparkling all the things that the body can use for a better organization. And so I think can be very good for us to trying to understand what we want to do with a tool and specific with the movement.
Yes, and you showed us the ball as a tool, something that most people have or can adapt. I know you also have the inner sense loop, which is a totally different tool. How do you decide which tool?
Well, can we go back to the first question for a second before we go to the next one? Yeah, I'm thinking as I'm thinking of everything I saw in all of our videos of tools now as being part of a curated environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people talked about connection to the environment and that whatever that is, I mean, in Tai Chi, that first tool is going to be ground that we can't get away from anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then Marlo is working, when she's working with the pole becomes the ground, yes? And now, so it's, and whether it's a block or a pillow or a strap or a sponge, you're curating the environment and adjusting your affordances and your constraints to explore that territory. Anyway, just the thought that bubbled up for me based on
Yeah,
the
no,
week.
thanks, Susan. And what really bubbled up for me around seeing all these videos is in my mind, suddenly the tool, I don't know, something about watching all of them. It's like, yes, whole body, whole system, but really we are also a system with our environment. And that all of you gave to me just by the way that your videos interacted with each other. And, I've been immersed in this biotensegrity for quite a while now, and still things are popping out. Now, let me find it here. Well,
I
we're
think
still.
Mary had something too, right, Mary?
Yeah,
Okay, thanks, Mary. Go
I,
ahead.
yeah, I'd like to talk about um, tools and imagery also. I think it's a tool in a way.
Yeah.
That when what we're trying to do is invite our client or student to have a different sensation, a different perception than their normal habitual way of moving and thinking about the world. So when someone feels the cool, damp grass under their feet, that invites a new impression of the relationship between themselves and the world. Or perhaps not new, perhaps remembered, perhaps coming back to something long ago for them. We can't tell because they are the person who is reorganizing it. But then they stand up with that sensation in their feet, and their coordination is different. So for me, however I invite someone to have a new impression from the world, whether it's an image or whether it's the wall or whether it's a piece of cloth or a ball, it doesn't matter. It's what the client feels out of that, and then how they revise their a whole relationship with the world because of that different way of perceiving it.
Yeah, thank you.
Sense.
And imagery is something that we talk about a lot and people are using a lot. So, but before we get back to that topic of imagery, I would like to invite us, anybody in the audience, if you have questions or comments about tools, or want to come up, put your question in the chat, raise your hand, and we will invite you to contribute to the conversation. We are very much about learning through conversation. Kim Fuller, I don't think you're here, but this would be the time for the question that Kim had, Bruna, for you. It was in your discussion space. This is paraphrased, so it's not exactly the same. Kim, jump on up if you're here. Otherwise, I'm going to read it out. She asked, Bruna, do all of the clients you work with seem to be able to sense the relationship with the ball right away? To shift from the idea of the ball as a tool to release part of the body to that of the ball as a stimulus of dialogue that allows the body to show what it needs and to self-adapt accordingly. Or is that capacity to sense and respond something that varies a lot from person to person? And for those who don't sense it as easily at first, is there anything you do to help that capacity develop, or do you do anything at all?
Thank you, Chris. I think there is something that helped me with biotensegrity, and is because we know there is a very deep science, and sometimes there is very things that we didn't know for sure, and we are trying to understand. Is what in my mind, I have something, but when I apply this for a client, I choose different perspectives. So yes, I use the ball for every client, and in any possibilities, with the idea of not being a tool and being something that is going to build a relationship with my client or my patient. But the way I invite the person to be in relationship with the ball is not specific what is in my mind. So in the moment that I introduce a ball for a patient, and I have all the concepts of soft matter and building a relationship and bringing all the things that I going to phrase in my mind what I want to propose for this person, I keep this in my mind, but I use language that is possible for everybody to create a relationship. Otherwise, I'm going to build something that is very far from the person. So my idea is when I introduce a ball, I start asking questions about how the body change and related with the ball. And with this, what the person brings to me sometimes is not the way she's speaking, but the way I look at the body, or some voice or some phrase or some quality or behavior that the person starts to create and talk. With that, I start to bring more possibilities, more questions, images, and I choose language to be able to step from the ball for a tool or something that is going to fix something and start to build this relationship. So in my mind, I don't believe that is something that is, we can use this only with the person who has a lot of self sense or a lot of awareness, because I think this is something that is everybody have inside. So I choose to look at the person like a very integrated and self-organized system. So with this in mind, doesn't matter how she's familiar with the movement and the awareness or the somatic practice.
Thank you, Bruna. Does anybody else have more to say on that? Either here on the panel, go ahead, Nuno, and if you're in the audience and have more to say, you could put your hand up, please, your electronic hand. Go ahead.
No, I just want to mention one thing. Mary mentioned talk about imagery, and Bruna talked about using words, imagery and words to communicate. And there's something that I think it needs to be mentioned, and Marlo's presentation was on that mostly. That, and she says specifically, language shapes experience and potential in any way, positively or negatively. So there needs to be like Bruno was saying, a real channel of communication, access to the person we are facilitating the process, so that we use the potential instead of diminishing the experience of the person. I don't know if Marlo wants to. I use the words, but maybe they weren't exactly what you said. I don't know. But I found it interesting.
We were circling tools, and now we're exploring language. So I'll say something brief about each of those. When it comes to working with an apparatus, and I consider even the ground or the floor, if you're really considering it, it becomes your partner or a tool that you're working with. And I see people become much better organized when their consideration is, how am I having an impact on this other thing or this other being or surface? It doesn't matter if you're twirling of something, moving it through the air. They tend to move themselves much better by externalizing their focus, which I find very interesting. And likewise, as I teach people to do things like lifting themselves upside down in ways that they haven't before, they've been exposed to information like engage this, use this muscle. And I have them direct their attention to having an effect on the thing that they're doing, like breaking something in two pieces, ripping it out of the ceiling and the floor, while sending yourself in that direction, which are all external focuses, which, the end effect is that they're much better organized and have a lot less thoughts about what they're doing, which tends to be a language that interferes with their sense of wholeness. So, with this topic, and as I've come to learn more about biotensegrity and being exposed to more and more language and science and ideas that were foreign to me, it can be difficult to integrate. But that's where it becomes important to remember that anything that simplifies the experience and clarifies the experience is probably having the effect that we're all sort of championing. So in my talk, I talked about imagery or moving as if you are something else, and that can be a more direct route to a biotensegrity consistent organization because it bypasses the systems that people have been exposed to about parts-based verbiage. Is because a character arrives pre-coordinated,
Right.
whereas instructions don't necessarily, which is very interesting. Instructions, we're trying to assemble them and make meaning and process it and put it here and put it there. But when you move as if you are something other than what you are, it suddenly usually comes through as clear for most people if they're willing to commit to it. So
Interesting. And I would say too, okay, Liz, if you can unmute, because we'll call you up in a moment. I would say too, we're talking about tools, and yes, the ball, the Pilates equipment, the kettlebell, the inner sense, images, metaphors, and language we could also choose to see as tools. But let's invite Liz up. Hi, Liz. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank everyone first for such engaging videos, for sharing your work, for sharing your lenses. I've really received so much from each one of you. And I just am appreciating like the thread that I'm kind of like feeling is to come into relationship to ourselves in that organization and then like with the tool or with the environment. It's like we're coming to it from that place of a witnesser, you know? And so I and I don't know if I can articulate this as well as like as it's like kind of coming to my brain, but I feel like it's more than just interoception, you know, like because we know that this exists without nervous system, and it's more about consciousness, and that when you feel your central channel in the witness to the relationship of how your body is patterning, there's something else that happens when you're in witness to that pattern. And then it kind of like makes, I believe like there's, you know, that fractaleness of essence and consciousness in all of our cells, from our central channel to all of our cells. And I just want to like, I heard everyone say wholeness, and, you know, Marlo's example of the difference between raise your hand and do you feel yourself raising your hand? That's a different cue, because I think we're bringing in consciousness. And then I like to think about like, okay, in the tensegral models, like the energy that is pulling in and pushing out and like creating that expression with, you know, in relationship to the denser matter. Like you're, how can I say this? Like, um, we're almost like with that witness of consciousness to then the spaces that might be a little bit more restricted and dehydrated and turned off. You're like reminding them, like, yeah, you remember you're awake and alive too. And like, and then there's like this other thing that happens in the volume of our being. So I know, and I hope this kind of like translates and makes sense, but that's what I was feeling the thread in everybody, and how you're cueing is from a witnesser, and you're inviting a reclaiming of consciousness from the places that are dense and kind of maybe offline to us, and bringing it back. And then that feeling of like, ah, I'm more awake and alive, and then I'm more awake and alive in relationship to another person or the environment that I'm in.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, I taught yoga for decades even. And so referring to the Bhagavad Gita, I would often say, you know, from the seat of the doer to that of the observer, the witnesser. Okay, we have Susan Koenig up, and
Chris, also, Doug and Joe both had some really good points.
Yeah, I was
And
actually just about to say that.
yeah,
So Joe does not, they don't have their hands up. So what I was going to do is ask them to put their hands up if they wanted to speak. And then after that, we have Susan. Joe is now unmuted, so Susan will ask Joe to go first. Doug, if you wish, I'm not sure if you're in a place where that happens, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Okay? So Joe, go ahead. I thought this was really interesting what you brought up
Oh, my last comment in the chat, you mean?
about the metronomes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's getting more popular. So think about it. When you talk about metronomes and tempo, what you're really talking about is almost like bounce. Think of
Yeah.
it almost like is like a bounce. Get there and don't be mushy like like a meatball. You want to be like kind of more like a ping pong ball. Get in and get off of it. Uh, and getting back to the injuries, like I'm here in sports now, all these crazy Achilles tendon injuries that we used to see in athletes that were close to 40. Now we're seeing them in younger and younger people, and even at the high school level, I'm seeing them. Either tendon injury, Achilles tendon injuries, or what's called Sever's disease, where in the early adolescence, it's where the tendon comes into the growth plates where the injury is. But I asked him, I said, are you jump roping in PE in your phys ed classes? And they say, more and more saying no. And by the way, it's interesting that the American Phys Ed Association and the American Heart Association they broke apart, so there's no more jump rope for the heart. So the kids aren't jumping rope anymore. And again, getting back to the dance, which used to always be a big part of the PE. It's all about rhythm, tempo, coordination, those type of things. And uh, yeah, so it's yeah, I just came back from a seminar where there are a couple people that I work with the swimmers are using it. And even using it during their strength training. So let's say they're doing pull-ups, but they're doing the pull-ups in rhythm with a metronome. So now it's just kind of not just cranking out pull-ups, but you kind of have to keep a pace that's similar with the strokes that you're doing in with the water. The other thing that I saw was they're overhead and they have their arms up at the end range. They're with a partner, and the two partners have a pole that they're pushing isometrically pushing against with the arm at end range at a certain rhythm and tempo. It's really cool because if you think about training it this way, there's even less recovery time involved than when you're always, pushing these heavy kinds of weights in the gym. And the other thing, again, getting back to the double dutch, when I used to, and again, that's something else I don't see anymore in the gym. But when I used to, when I first started teaching phys ed, and I used to watch the African American girls doing it in the gym, and it would amaze me what they were doing. They'd have two ropes spinning at once. They would have their eyes closed.
Oh,
They'd be spinning and hopping in all types of different directions. Sometimes in rhythm with partners, just by going with what they were hearing with the rope hitting against the floor. And it was funny. Sometimes, like, I would come in and I would spin the ropes. And then I'd see they'd have their eyes closed, mind you. But they'd say, who is that on the right? Turning that rope. You're not doing it right. They could tell that something was off. So think about the vestibular awareness and all the other type of things that are going on. So again, when I talk about talk about biotensegrity, to me that's what I think about on how to apply it in my world. And listen to Marlo's comments. That's kind of exactly what she's talking about. So, does that help?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. That's great. And it really gets into the oscillations, right? That we feel in
Yes.
the tensegrity. Okay, we have Susan, Doug, and Natalie, who also has a question about hands as tools. Susan, do you want to go first? Doug, I'm not sure if you want to speak or not. Yeah. Oh, can you use your electronic hand? It really helps me. Um, Susan, can Doug go
Yeah.
first or you want to go first?
I
Thanks,
don't
Doug.
care.
Okay, I'm going to do it in the order on my screen. First Susan, then Doug. Carol, we're going to go on to the next subject, or maybe not. Maybe we'll just keep it like this. Okay, Susan, go ahead.
Hi.
Let's try to keep it.
My comment is real simple. What I'm really loving is setting up experiences, movement experiences, whether it's using tools or metaphor, various kinds of language play. I love what Joe just said, and helping and asking people what they notice, getting the conversation going. Some people may notice what they didn't notice, like they weren't having their mind on muscles at all. Some people noticed shapes, some people noticed where they had points of stability. Some people noticed whatever they noticed, but getting that cross dialogue going between the group if you're in a teaching situation, and not mentioning, you don't have to mention biotensegrity or any of the concepts. The experience can come first, and then further on in the education, you can bring in that's an example of soft matter, self-adaptability, et cetera, et cetera. So I love the experiential aspect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Go ahead, Doug. Carol, Natalie had her hand up before you did. Or she had a comment in the chat. We'll just see if she wants to come up or not. And then after that, I know Kamila has to leave a little bit before the end of this call, so I want to shift over to something that Kamila brought up for us. Okay, Doug, where are you?
Here, just a quick follow-up to what Joe was saying. I mean, something Dr. Levin Steve has said many times with when he was doing manual therapy, treating things that were issues with the dynamics of the system or dynamical diseases. He said, first I needed to adjust something manually, but then he would always prescribe that they did something rhythmic, a rhythmic movement. And he said, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be swimming, it could be walking, but something oscillatory that resets the system. And I think that's just a beautiful connection to what Joe was just saying. I'm not sure which one of my comments you were wanting me to read, but I'll do both of them really quick. So Snelson said, this is to the definition, Snelson said, and it makes sense for an artist, said a tensegrity is forces made visible. For anyone who does hands-on work with bodies, a tensegrity is maybe more importantly forces made palpable. And it's always such a profound thing when somebody who works with bodies feels this, they go, I understand this. And the transfer of that is so remarkably direct and easier to feel than to explain. And my
Which
question
is
for
another
Bill,
use of tools, right? We
100%.
really use these models as a tool for understanding.
Yep.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's good.
Anything else, Doug?
Well, I was just, I mean, it seems like people are thinking about using tools in a way that's more exploratory and non-direct, looking for a result. I'm finding at the piano here, it's an incredibly practical thing to do for very specific results as well. And I was curious if you think about that, Bruna, with activities of people doing things with their arms for integration and things like that. And that's the question.
Can I go?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Doug. When I wrote your message in the beginning of the conversation, for me was, okay, is amazing this, because when we work with experience, it's always like, okay, in experience, this is help, but how can I use that in every relation that we create? Because sometimes we are playing piano and using the piano as a tool, the ball as a tool, and how can I use that for a relationship? And in my practice, I work in always with the somatic approach, but I work with somebody who came from me with one desire. So I want to, I have a scoliosis and I want to get better. So, or I have some pain and I want to understand what is going on. And I think when we understood that the ball is something that we are creating a relationship, we can use like as a specific, and I shift my mind to work with this. So if I'm putting the ball as I playing piano to give me awareness of how my body is centered and grounded, how can I use this sensorial feedback the ball is giving me to apply this bouncy in my hands, and how this can create some different rhythm in the way I play? Or how can I use this as something that around me and I have a little bit more fluid and more easy in my body, allowing my hands drove like in different ways. So I totally think that we can use in different ways for a specific thing. Amazing, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug, do you want to say anything before we move on in response to Bruna?
Oh, that's great. I just really quickly, I have one, this at my sacrum and this one under my left foot, and I'm exploring that as I'm playing across. And it's the quality, it's about the quality of the contact on the key, relating it to the quality of contact with these points and the movement. It's amazing. And I've had these balls sitting here the whole time. I didn't use them. I feel silly now.
Thank you. And, just I love that what we're doing here is it's not just about movement practices. It's about living and how we relate in life. Okay. We have Carol Davis and Natalie Rosetto with your hands up. Carol, up in and out.
I was struck by something that Liz said in her comment of it seems as if when we're talking about the connection with a tool in this relationship, Kamila said it in the chat, it gets tricky because it moves into repairing or fixing versus listening. And the quality of movement and touch changes. I just came away from treating my sister who has some back pain, and I was using the soft ball on her. She was supine, and I had it in her thoracic area. We both have Grandma Lucy's thoracic forward movement. And I was thinking, oh, what a missed opportunity. And then I thought, all I needed to do, I was using it as a tool, and all I needed to do was to say, now sink into that ball and allow that ball to talk with you, to speak to you. What do you think? What do you think you would be experiencing if that ball had something to say to you? And then Liz said, it seems like something more than interoception. And how does consciousness come into this? And I thought, well, that's really fascinating because what we get back when we ask that question in relationship to the tool has got to be both sensation and stuff that is in our bank of experiences that consciousness brings back to us, um, real or distorted every day. So I just wanted to offer that out as another way of looking at this whole concept of the relationship versus using it as a tool, and how now I am being corrected by this one more time by this wonderful discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, biotensegrity really is a paradigm shift. And along with that,
Yeah.
I think we all find everything else starts to shift.
Right.
And to
Right.
me, that's very exciting. I am in this biotensegrity bubble very much, and I really enjoy and love the world, the community that I'm in. I have a personal opinion that it would be great if more of the world resonated with that. But for now, we can really feel into this community that we all have, and I'm very grateful to be part of it. Okay, Natalie, last one before I change topics. Thank you very much for your patience.
Oh, I'm really appreciate all the videos, this discussion. It's so good to be here. It's good to feel in the videos what I feel in my body, and this is blowing my mind here. And when you talk about the tools, I was thinking because hands could be a tool, but it's a soft matter, and in these changes, it's difficult for me to understand this because even if we think about this perspective that hands will be used to listen, not doing anything, just listen. But it's something for me that how I am in listening, in these changes for me, if this can be a tool, it's not about being or what is better. I don't know how to say this, but it's different. And I would like to think, and this is difficult for me to talk here to in words, but that's why I said I will try. When you think in listen, you listen and think in your head or in your body, you know.
Mhm.
And this is something I when I was doing the watching the videos and thinking, and the way I feel raising my hand, like Kamila said, this is wonderful. How I'm feeling when I touch, when I'm with a client and I touch what I feel, and I don't want to impose something, but this changed the perspective for me, and that's what I would like to talk with my when I ask that question. This is something I was thinking. I don't know if I could explain. Thank you.
And
Yes, thank
Natalia?
you, Natalie. First, I want to thank you for having the courage to come up and speak to all of us. And then Susan has something to say, and Camilla, I know you were responding, so perhaps you'd like to step forward as well. Go ahead, Susan.
I just wanted to say, Natalia, I don't know what your first language is, but we do have speakers here in many different languages. So if you'd prefer to make a statement or write a statement or say something, we have people here who speak, well, several languages, but Portuguese is one of them. I don't know what your first language is.
It's Portuguese. I'm from Brazil.
So
I think
if
you
you
know
want,
Bruna, yes?
Yes, I know. I
yeah,
love
so
Bruna.
if you want to say it in Portuguese, they can translate for you. Anyway, just wanted to offer that.
Thanks, Susan.
Okay, thank you.
Although you're beautifully spoken in English, I have to say.
Thank you. I tried.
You. Yeah.
Eu não sei se eu posso falar em português rapidamente. É sobre isso, é sobre. Eu não sei se é mais fácil falar em português, porque também me faltam palavras, Bruna.
Natalia,
Nuno também
shall I
entende.
translate? Shall I do the translation? Please?
Maybe.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you give smaller chunks, it will be easier for the translation to happen.
Vai falando, Natália.
Eu não sei se falar em português seria mais fácil, porque me faltam palavras.
She thinks that talking in Portuguese may not be as easy because she may also lack words.
Porque a biotensegridade me faz ver que eu não sei se eu consigo falar em palavras, é sensações.
She
E
says that biotensegrity tells her that maybe she cannot express in words what she feels in sensations.
Mas eu, de qualquer forma, eu agradeço a oportunidade de colocar essa visão de como usar as mãos. Eu tenho
But I
essa,
thank the opportunity to have this opportunity to show the use of the hands because I have these. Tenho essa?
essa necessidade
I have that need
de como usar melhor as minhas mãos
of
e
how to
como,
use my hands better.
e como colocar esse tudo que vocês falam dentro da biotensegridade, como eu mudo o paradigma.
And to use everything that we talk in biotensegrity to change her paradigm.
Que eu venho da biomecânica, dessa ideia de você corrigir.
I come from biomechanics, I come from the idea of correcting.
Isso é muito bonito, é apaixonante. Obrigada.
This is beautiful. Thank you. It's passionate.
Agradeço.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Natalia. Thank you, Nuno. Before I ask Kamila if she has any response, I do want to say, Natalia, that listening to you speak, what really jumped out for me is and my own experience as well, using my hands helps me embody and feel in my whole body and get out of the thinking mind into the experience. And I know, Mary, you talked about that sort of thing also in your presentation, but that's a really important part of the shift that people are making. Do you understand, or do you need Nuno? Sorry, I didn't stop to translate. Nuno is good.
I can understand.
Oh.
It's okay. Just
Okay.
to talk is difficult for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Kamila, did you want to respond to Natalia at all before we move on? I got to open up my other computer here while we do that.
Well, I was curious about the question, and I understood it now that it's more like a comment, right, Natalia? Or? Yes, okay. What comes to my mind is that it's about changing the relationship. We are still repeating the same principles. Like, it's really complicated, and for me it's paradigm, also biotensegrity. But at the same time, when you start having these glimpses of understanding what it's about, then it's still the same principles. It's just still running around relationship, interconnectedness, forces dynamics, but it has this core of it. And when we talk about tools, we can use our body as a tool. Many people approach the body that it's a tool. It changes completely the relationship with the body. I can select my hand and say, okay, this is going to be my tool. And tools are used to repair stuff, or tools are used to make something easier. But even if I take a hammer and I want to hit a nail, if I take this hammer in the quality of presence that we are talking about right now, and I stay in connection with the ground, then the boundaries are disappearing in some way, but one cannot get lost in it. So it's like a game between those boundaries in a way. And when it comes to using hands in therapy, because I think this is huge for manual therapists, because we're so focused on the techniques and doing it right. And this is such a shift because it's not so much about the cookbook. It's not so much about the recipe and following this specific method, but it's more about being there with what is right now, because the person who comes to you is completely different. Even if it's the same person, it's completely different person than who was there like 3 days ago. It's completely different conditions. The body is different. And when we use the hands as tools, is the repairing. When we forget that there are some hands, but it's whole body, it shifts. I hope that makes sense, Natalia. If there is any other comment, I'm grateful to clarify it, because English is not my first language.
Thank you. It's so beautiful to listen. This is very touching me. Your what you said, because it's about not the hands. All of your body is there, and that's why it's not. It wasn't a question. It's a comment, but it's something like this. I don't know if this is a tool, because I am a person with in relationship with other person. Do you understand? This is what I blow my mind here. Thank you.
By the way, it's very good to see you. Thank you for joining us today. One more thing I forgot to mention is that sometimes the listening looks very passive. It's like, okay, so now I'm listening, but I need to do stuff, right? Like I'm here to work with the person. They expect me to do something. But when you listen, it's not just passive, because like every single moment you react to what's happening. And that's the dialogue that we were talking, I believe many of us mentioned in the movement. And that's why I have put the snail into the video, because I got stuck with it some days ago. And I love to observe them because they're so slow. And you can see how every single movement they make is because there's some stone. They're not planning probably like how to crawl over the terrain. I saw one that fell down, and it slowly turned and moved again, because it's reacting, it's listening to the environment, and it's following the path that is, I believe, that takes the least energy at that moment. So thank you.
Please let me just say something really quick. And some minutes ago, Craig mentioned tools are an interface between the body and the environment. And when the definition is put it like that, we have one thing and the other. And we are talking about systems that become system, not two separate things. So we talk about tools, but we actually talking about the change of the environment. If I have a kettlebell in my hand, then my environment is different. If when Kamila is exploring the grass under her feet, is the grass a tool? No, it was there. So I think we are using the word tool that can create some distraction.
I agree. And Susan did, Susan talked about the environment, and also we're using this word tool, which is totally seated in the mechanistic model. So here we go again. Susan, you had something to say. Mary, did you have something to say about this too? I saw you kind of at one point. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't at the moment.
No, okay, go ahead.
So when you do Tai Chi sword, your body ends at the tip of the sword or a little beyond it, right? So we can see the tool as the curated environment, right? Depending on what we're doing, right? Or we can see it as us. And think of people with prosthetic limbs, or somebody walking with stilts or whatever. Their body, I mean, again, I'm just thinking that depending on, as you shift your framing, what becomes possible. and how it becomes possible changes. So that when you first use Taiji sword and you're thinking of the sword as other, and you're trying to negotiate integration, it's a challenge. But when you begin to understand that the end of that sword is that's the reach of your body, and you've basically added another link to your arm, it's a very different, you end up with different behavior. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Just to let everybody know, Bruna is popping on and off. She's unfortunately in a place where her internet's not being all that cooperative today. We have just over half an hour left. Liz and Clara both have your hands up. Why don't you go ahead, Liz?
I just wanted to comment more about what Kamila was saying about presence. I think it lights us all up because it's like the art of what we do is this like sensing the other, the client, as that, other biotensegral bubble. And when we're presencing with that tension under the skin, it's like again, the consciousness, when the body feels you feeling it in that really listening way, that adaptation is so honored, you know? When it can feel like you're not bulldozing it to your own agenda of how you think that trunk and pelvis should be organized, but rather you're honoring the adaptation that that organism took to keep moving themselves forward and keep their eyes on the horizon, just like that snail, right? Like there's something else that happens where, in my experience, is like, to me, that's like how things hold in the system, and is when the client themselves are feeling the honoring, and then that mirror is happening. And it's like it holds because it came into relationship from within them and not because another external practitioner is like doing their thing. And I think that's like what excites all of our manual movement therapists, because it's like, oh, the art, and then the client feeling the empowered agency because, oh, I came into relationship with it in a new way, and so it holds. So yeah, that presence.
Thank you, Liz. And I just want to let people know and read out that Marco added that the gestures are part of thinking. He's given a link. I'll put the chat up with the replay. He says one of the most influential researchers is David McNeil, who argued that gesture and speech form a single integrated system rather than two separate channels. And Eileen says it's interesting that tools become part of our body map. It's being demonstrated with use of a cane in folks who are not sighted. And I often sense that through my hands, the body I'm with is mapped in my brain. Clara, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm thinking about what Natalia said. And Natalia, I'm also a Brazilian, and I understand you're difficult about speaking English, and also about think how we bring the biotensegrity paradigm for our work. And maybe what I think it's we need to learn a new way of learning and rethink about our paper like a professional and the questions we made. Because the thing is, the difficult for me, it's because sometimes we're still looking for the biomechanical questions, trying to input the biotensegrity lens, and it doesn't match.
Yeah.
And maybe we should always make the exercise to remember what the bodies represent as a biological body, and then we can go through our questions and rethink about what we're doing. And for me, I think this is one of the most difficult things because we're still looking mechanical way, trying to input another paradigm, and it's really
I
complicated.
totally agree with you, Clara. I mean, we just do it. It becomes automatic. Now, Camilla, I know you have to go very shortly. Can I just bring one thing up that I was really curious to hear you talk about? And that is your model, your your closed kinematic chain model, just was such a beautiful demonstration. You were moving the bottom points, and we saw how the whole thing responded, as Susan Lowell has given to all of us. One thing moves, everything moves. One thing stops, everything stops. And it's instantly and everywhere. It's not sequential. And then you tied the green ribbon around and you moved that same 2 points, and we could see that the movement was different. And I heard you say something like, intuitively, have to put in more force in order for the whole thing to respond. So I am really curious about how we can navigate this idea of restrictions. And, we want to go in there, we want to release the restrictions. But how does that model teach us that maybe there are different ways to navigate it? Maybe I'm just curious to see, what does that model teach you about restrictions? Is that a contradictory statement? This is restricted, and yet we're moving with the whole body. How do you sort that out in your mind? Because it's really confusing. I gave you a hard one. And then she's going to be glad to leave.
I think it's important to know that this is just a model and all models are wrong. And this is to illustrate some ideas. But I have already talked to some people because I use this one a lot. And by the way, this model happened, it emerged because I was trying to create a jitterbug during Susan's course and during the pandemic. And it failed, but this happened instead. And I'm still using the same model during workshops because it's so illustrative and because everything moves, right? So what you can understand it, or how you can use it as a metaphor. My favorite one with women who are wearing bras, that's like a genius example, because sometimes for tension in the neck that is repeatedly being released, so-called, it's enough just to open the bra or put a wider space for the body to be able to move. So for me, it's the green bow on the model. It could be the clothes you are wearing, and it has different shape than your body. It can be some thought that you are giving yourself how you're supposed to be moving. That can be the green bow, that you are holding something because your mind thinks that this is the correct way to do it, and then you don't allow the body to do what it's best in doing. And I had third one and it slipped away, but it can be used in so many.
Go
yes,
ahead.
The restrictions. I am not a big fan of restrictions and releasing things in the body. I like to look at it that when something is holding, it has a reason why it does so. So I like to work with adding things and adding support and finding out ways to provide safe space for the body, so it can let go on its own.
I totally agree. I saw Marlo, I think I saw your video flash on. I saw Mary nodding. And I wanted to say also that model can also demonstrate how you change the pattern of coupled close kinematic chains, and the movement changes. And that's, you know, that might be because we want to move to a different to have a different motion or movement. Marlo or Mary, did you want to?
Yeah, I have a comment. Sometimes, well, a recent example for me is I have a client who's comes, and every time he's telling me about how he's feeling much better and all kinds of things are happening, but he still has this thing that he doesn't like, right? And he's seeing a rolfer, which is who hasn't been trained in movement and doesn't have a introduction to this way of thinking. So the rolfer keeps trying to fix the thing that I'm trying to let, you know, let it have its way, you know, with resolve in its own time. I know it's trauma based, so it's going to take a minute, right? So what I keep doing is, well, first of all, I talk to him about it. You know, it's like, this guy has a different point of view from me, and I'm trying to help you see yourself as a self-organizing being and trust that. And also, my point of view is that all restrictions, or 99% of them, are protective or supportive. So they deserve gratitude. They deserve to be understood and appreciated, and not just, you know, hated because you don't like how it looks or it doesn't feel good or whatever. So to find a different relationship with the restriction while building a better support or a better protective way of being in your life, then you could let go of it for real, you know, in your own, from within yourself.
Yeah, nice, Mary. I often used to say when people notice things like that, we would sit and meditate and invite them to notice. And if there was an area of holding, send it love and thank it. It's been here for your protection or some other reason you might not know. And that's what really comes up for me when I hear you. Marlo, did you want to say something or not? I'm not quite sure. No? Okay. Marco also has added in the chat, Marco, and anyone, if you want to hop on, please put up your electronic hand because I can't, there's too much going on for me to really be navigating the chat. So if you do want us to call you up with a question, with a comment, please put up your hand. That makes it much easier for me to see. Okay, and in the meantime, I know this is a topic that Jason Rita will often bring up, and that is like this friction between the idea of, you know, the body is always efficient. It's always acting its most efficient way, reorganizing according to energy minimalization. And that might involve a restriction. And then on the opposite side, your clients are coming with you and they're not looking at the body's self-organization as a positive thing, as an energy efficient thing. They're looking at it as a pain in their hip or their back. And this is an ongoing conversation. I don't expect you all to come in here with here is the answer, but I am interested in your thoughts or your questions on this topic. So, Mary, I saw you nod. Do you want to start or?
I think I just said my piece about it.
Okay. Anybody else? Bruna, are you unmuted?
Yes, I am. I wasn't sure. I am. Sorry. The HT is here, so I'm trying to find a place to get better connection. Chris, you were asking about the relationship about shear, is that right?
Just in general, this whole the kind of it seems to be two opposing things between we are talking about first principles and how living organisms are always self-organizing according to energy minimalization and the other first principles. And then we'll have people say, but that's not what people experience. They don't experience it as ease. And I have my own opinions about this, but I'm wondering yours.
Yeah.
Or your questions and thoughts around it.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring some thoughts because I think it is a very long discussion. Every time I think about how the body self-organize and how biotensegrity give us the first principles to hold an understanding of the body related of what we have in some kinds of science, bringing the relation of the body is always losting something, because the relationship about shear is the shear is happening because the body is lost something, is lost mobility, or we can go dive and look at the fascia research and all the things that we talk about this year as something that is the body not working the ways it's supposed to work. So for me is what I think in my clients in movement is always a way to better organize in the moment that they need in movement. So if it's something that is feeling about something, holding of the body, not using the way they we want or supposed to understand that is the right way. There is something a way to organize, and we have a discussion, and I'm gonna bring spiral because it's something that is in my mind as you talked. When we talk about spirals, in biological understanding, in movement, in application of movement, we can understand that is in some point the spirals stop, or we can understand that in the moment that there is no way to go in one direction, there is the opportunity to go another. So for me, and is interested because I'm in my PhD, because this year there are ways to measure shearing in the body, and what if the shearing is something that is not happening because the organization of the body is way more more interesting. And I lost my connection.
Sorry,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry, Bruna. We're going to move on because you're losing your connection. Joe saying the way I explain it is the ache or pain is part of the body that is overloaded and asking for help. Isolating it with specialized exercise or beating it up with a massage gun or an elbow won't help. That's great, Joe. So we have about 20 minutes left. And if there is anybody here in the audience with a question, I encourage you to ask it now, because this is your opportunity to ask questions to each of these speakers. And if not, I would like to say that.
Can I just mention something?
Please.
I would like to highlight what Susan presented in a video that was not spoken here yet, but we all live on that, which is most of us come from, I would call them old techniques and methods of work, and Susan comes from the oldest of them all. And Susan points something that I think it's fundamental, that we can learn from what was done before the lens of the modernization of knowledge, biomechanics and all that thing. A lot of content was lost and has been lost, and it's still being lost from the introduction of different lenses in all techniques. I remember that we I think it was Leonid that kept saying, the practices that you people are doing are wonderful. They have always been wonderful. The hands-on and the movement practitioners, they are right. the lens through which you're trying to view them is distorting them. And there's a huge conflict in our practice and what we think we should be doing or saying or thinking. And I know from self-experience and talking to other colleagues that when we are in closed doors, we do our things. Even if you don't have the language of biotensegrity to allow us to do what we feel it's right, we contour biomechanics and we go around the anatomy of parts because we sense other things. We know we are another thing. So I think the Susan's reflection is it's necessary to be outspoken. Thank you, Susan.
Yes, thank you, Nuno, and thank you, Susan. So we have a question from Adrian, and that is to Mary Bond. In your video, you talked about expanded feelings in the body, which makes room for a more natural helical movement. I love this part of the video too, Mary. Can you please describe more in detail how this helical movement looks like in a walking motion and how expanded feelings interact with that? This is from Adrian. I won't read your last name.
Yeah, so when our bodies are, I think of it as when we occupy the full volume of our bodies and are not wrinkled or pinched in by habit or protective impulse. When most of us is available for movement, most of our tissues are open and free and able to glide, then our joints, as well as the interfaces between soft tissue weaving of the connective tissue, all of that is designed to rotate. It's like every joint in the body is designed to rotate a little bit. So when there's more space within all of those parts, between each vertebra, at each joint, then there's more potential for omnidirectional movement in the whole body. And I don't know if you can see it in the very end of the video that I did, where I'm working with the man whose legs are tattooed at the end. And there's two short clips. One is of him before we worked, and one is after. And if you look carefully at that, I can't remember the name of the person who asked the question, but you see a glimmer of rotational activity in the upper spine, especially. His hips are a little bit more loose. His legs are a little bit more resilient with the ground, but mostly you can see this tiny little bit of contralateral motion emerge in the upper back. And when I saw that, I thought, okay, we just keep going along little by little by little because the work works. If you just get that omnidirectional expansion and that tension balanced in the whole system, then what is there to happen is going to happen. So I can't tell you how it looks, how it should be, because then people tend to imitate it and do contralateral movement, and it's like it becomes a mess. But if you look at any creature, they're all doing that. They're all rotating, everyone.
Thank you, Mary Ann, for that clip, that part of your video, then matched with Nuno's statement that blocking the rotations that naturally emerge in the body will tend to focus load or force, and allowing them to happen distributes that force. Like I said before, I've been immersed in this community for a long time, but that gave me really showed up how I'm still holding on to the old paradigm, and gave me a lot to explore for myself. And because I have an injury in my wrist right now, I can really feel it. So that was really fun.
Good.
Any other responses to this? Any other questions from the audience? Susan says, Steve says all movement is helical. We were talking about that one of our Trailblazers meetings, and he talked about Punjabi and Ham. Okay, so Marlo, you said, where is it here? You reminded us that jargon is still jargon. Instead of swapping one set of jargon for another, say things that people can feel. I loved that. It just like, yes. You raised a concern about, and Susan, you talked about what's happening when you see people bringing the machine model, conventional model, to the ancient wisdom, and what are the consequences of that? I agree with with what both of you are saying, but I wonder, do either of you or anyone on this call see that same risk happening with the biotensegrity lens as it becomes more popular? Just like picking up, oh, biotensegrity and da 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 da. I'm curious to hear you talk more about that. Whoever wants to go first can just unmute.
I think Mary just pointed out that people are trying to rotate themselves because rotation is part of the spine. So people now are going all over. There is that risk for sure.
Yeah. Certainly, when I was practicing yoga, I mean, we were not rotate, we were like intentionally twisting and twisting the spine. It was one of the 6 movements that you were taught to bring to a yoga practice, and that was the approach. Susan, or okay, go ahead, Mary.
I was just thinking that rotary capacity that we have, it goes deep, deep, deep in us, and that's when it emerges, is when it is much deeper than the muscles that can imitate it. You know, it's because it goes many layers below, and I don't know what they are, you know, but the organ systems have to be able to be moving, and within the organ systems, the cells, I suppose, you know.
Well, and the collagen and the DNA and all these scales, these patterns are showing up. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Susan. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mary.
The last piece of that is that when that begins to happen, then the restriction, you know, the thing that was holding on so tight begins to feel that, you know, it begins to go, well, maybe it's maybe not so necessary to be there.
Okay, so Susan, and then Marlo, if you want to say anything, and then Craig, I hope you will raise your hand and come on up and bring this point up. I'm sure it will bring some interesting discussion. Go ahead, Susan.
Well, I'm thinking about years ago, I had gone to Detroit because a guy had come from China, and he was doing a weekend, Tai Chi weekend. And I was so, it was so different from what I was used to that I was just exhausted mentally. Like at the end of the first day, I felt like, or day and a half, I felt like I can't hold anymore. And he was doing this thing with me, and I'm shifting from one leg onto the other. Okay, that's very basic, right? I'm just shifting my weight. Now we are taught, had been taught, knee has to be aligned with the center of the foot. Okay, so I was always, when I was shifting, when I was moving, I would force, right? Even though Tai Chi basic principle, you do not use force. That's like a major thing. I was making sure with force that my knee stayed in line with my foot. And this guy is guiding my leg, and I'm shifting onto my foot, and he is turning. I'm getting this turn at my ankle, the way you turn a wrist, right? and my knee was going out of alignment with the center of my foot. And I'm freaking out, right? Because that's wrong. That's not right. But then I also know, like, why did you go all the way to Detroit? Why did he come all the way from China? If I don't, invest in what it is I came here to learn, even if it's totally in violation of a framework I had been given for protection. I mean, it was just a really kind of shattering and difficult moment for me, but it's carried me through afterwards. It's like he was just showing me, he was allowing my body to do what it wanted to do. That's what he was guiding. He wasn't forcing anything. I had to release my forcing of the knee to stay over the foot. I had to let go of that, like intellectually, emotionally, physically. It was, but it didn't align with the machine mechanics. So,
Yeah.
Mary, it looks like you were going to say something.
It's just a comment that that's a perfect example of the hands as being educators. His hands were the educators. His hands were communicating and listening, and that was the dialogue.
Yeah, his hands were on you, but he was most likely listening with his whole body and his whole being, his consciousness, as Liz, I think it was talking about.
Yeah, because there's a whole thing that we do in Taiji, right? That's what gets called push hands, is sensing hands, is a connecting with the other person to create a oneness between you, ideally, when you're really doing it right. There is a thing that happens that's about becoming in system with each other. But he was in system with me, with my body.
Yeah.
But my mind was resisting. Do you see what I mean? I had to
It's hard. It's hard to let go of these things we've held dear. And that's what
hard.
we are faced with in the biotensegrity community. I mean, not so much me, because I've got this safe little bubble, but people who go out there, I hear again and again the resistance. But I am looking at the time. Marlo, did you want to comment on this?
We don't know we're doing it. We're resisting. We're working in the machine model more than we know.
Well, like I say, listening to Mary and Nuno, it's like, oh my gosh, I am still holding on to this. And so that let me explore new things. And I am sure it's going to come up again and again and again. Marlo, did you want to say anything about this topic before we move to Craig?
Well, the question you proposed before we went around was, do we run the risk of overcomplicating it? And yes.
Yeah.
And Susan, what you were just saying reminds me of a thought I've had for myself and given to some other people, which is like, just let the movement carry itself out, but you take yourself over there. Like, go over there. while the movement fulfills itself. There will be kinetic energy taking care of itself. That's not a tip for always, but sometimes it is, get out of your own way.
Yes. Something I've been really trying to work with lately is don't bully your body. That I don't even know the extent to which I'm bullying my own body, and to just awaken to that and trust that the organism knows more than my conscious brain ever could.
Don't bully your body. Yeah. Thanks, Susan. Okay, Craig's got something that is sure to spark some discussion. We are coming towards the end of this conversation, so let's try and keep your comment and our responses succinct. People seem to be dropping off the call. I know they're in various places with internet being a problem. Go ahead, Craig.
Okay, well, seem to be the subject of rotation in the body. And just last week I saw this video from Action Lab where he had a spinning wheel on a scale, and as he spun the wheel, he loads it up with his hands, very importantly, with his thumbs and his fingers. And when that starts spinning, the weight of the mechanism on the scale drops. So it goes lower than the actual weight of the mechanism. And that proves something that I've long held, that rotational energy interferes with your kinetic and potential energy. So your total energy in your body is your potential energy and your kinetic energy and your internal rotational energy. And it is extremely, that's how our body works on rotations. So when we walk, our upper body moves one way and the lower body moves the other way from the legs. We see them swapping. That's your upper body's turning this way and your lower body's turning the other way. And that internal rotation reduces your weight. And if anyone knows about a force plate, when the foot lands on the force plate, they get this spike and they call it the heel strike transident. And what's happening there is your body starting to spin as it contacts with the ground. And they're seeing it as a vertical shock absorption. So they design shoes to absorb shock. And what they're doing is damaging your body because it's not a shock absorption spike. It's really your ground's inducing rotation in your body, which you use to walk. And it's all this counter rotation is very important in the body.
Craig,
And the whole,
Craig, I put a link to an Action Lab video in the chat. It's called The Strange Limit of Frictionless Motion. I don't know if that's the one you're talking about.
did
Do
I
you know
put
what
one
it's
in?
called, or do you have a link to it? I think it would be good to have.
I did not put that in. I tried to copy it. I don't know if it was the right one.
Well, anyway, that'll get people to Action Lab if they don't know it.
It's Action Lab and it's rotational Archimedean wheel. I think that's what as you call it.
Archimedean.
Wheel.
Okay, and Craig, I'm going to ask you one thing regarding this because we are getting to the end of the call, and that is, I have to admit, I did not absorb what you're telling us. So if you were to invite me to explore that in my own body, do you have any suggestions of how to do that?
Well, when you walk, your left leg goes forward and your right arm goes back.
Mentor trail light. Indicted for bribery. This George.
That's you. I'm going to mute you.
So when your upper body turns with your arm swinging this way, your lower body's swinging the other way. So when you move your arms and your upper body and lower body move in opposite directions, and that's a counter rotation on itself, like this. Up and lower body are going in opposite directions, and that stores energy.
This happening.
No, it goes through your middle of your spine, where the middle of your upper body turns this way and your lower body turns the other way. And that counter rotation balances the energy of the system, so you don't pick it up on a scale. You think, in theory, you wouldn't, but in practice, you do. And that's what that Action Lab video showed. Don't know where it went.
I think I have the right link now. How does the anti-wheel work?
Yeah, so that's a physical measurement, and it's not what the guy was expecting, because I've always known that it's logical that this happens. If an object's spinning, it's not changing its position, therefore it's not changing its kinetic energy or its potential energy, but it has energy. So it must be absorbing energy. And so I've always known it, but there's an experiment there where it shows it actually happening in practice. The important part is he's using his hands to rotate the wheel. And your feet are similar to your hands with their toes and fingers, and they are rotating your body. And the fact that he has to lower the energy into that wheel using his fingers is your feet use their toes to load the energy into your body. And it doesn't come in the classical environment.
Okay.
And it's a very big subject, so it can't be discussed.
It sounds like a very deep subject, although I can certainly say my own experience of the toes mattering is they do make a difference.
I know we're over time. Can I say one thing about this? I think. Okay. So when I was a kid, this is making me remember, one of my brothers had like a plastic spaceship, but it had a gyroscope inside, but you couldn't see it. But there was a little thing and you could wind it, wind it, wind it. It had some spinning thing inside. So you'd wind it, wind it, wind it, and then you'd take the thing out. And inside this thing was spinning. And I remember holding this thing. You couldn't access the spinning stuff, but I remember being fascinated to just hold and move with this thing that had an internal power thing going on where it was resisting movement and then or facilitating movement depending on where I was and what was going on. And I just think that there's what is that experience? I don't know what to call that even today. So I look forward to the video. But how many experiences do we not have a word for? We are fascinated by, but we end up not talking about them. We just end up throwing them on the back shelf. Anyway, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think
Thank you, Craig, and thank you, Susan. So I'm going to wrap this up by asking everybody, well, a couple of things. Number one is there something that really sparkled for you? Something that stood out that you want to explore in your own body or study, continue to study? And if you could type that in the chat or note it for yourself and share it with something. Is it somebody? Is there a gift? Something that you got from this discussion that you want to turn around and share with yourself, explore yourself and share with someone else? You could type that in the chat. You could type that in the discussion box. Marco, this community is a gift indeed. So that's a really important question. We spent 2 hours together, everybody here, and those of you who had to leave early, I want to thank you, and especially our speakers, Susan, Mary, Nuno, Marlo, Bruna, and Kamila, for those amazing videos that each one is so rich that they are worth watching again and again. We do. I don't know if all the speakers will be able to make it. I'm kind of dropping on this on you. I don't know if you read the email or not, but in the coming months, we are talking about doing a follow-up session. So keep going back to those videos right in the discussion spaces, and we can follow up and deepen this conversation. And then, I'm hoping that you will facilitate that conversation then. And Jason has a link for finding out if you want to be on our email list. As I was saying at the beginning, this is a non-commercial, non-marketing event, all volunteer. And when I set up that website, which took quite a bit of time, I'm already seeing how to change it in future. I didn't ask you if you wanted to be on our email list. So I don't know if Jason's there. Maybe he's not. I will look for the link. So I can't email you, except for to let you know about the replay. On that email, I will also ask if you want to be on the email list of Embodied Biotensegrity, who hosted this event, and of course, the Stephen M. Levin Biotensegrity Archive. We have these regular tea parties there. Oh, Jason put that link in the chat if you want to visit that. And for our speakers here, people probably are going to want to know how to find you. Some of you have events coming up. I know, Nuno, you and Bruna and I are working on the spirals thing for the Fascia Hub and also for what we're offering. We have Sesimbra coming up. Bruna and Kamila are part of the Biotensegrity, Applied Biotensegrity for Physiotherapy group. I know that Marlo, you're all around the world teaching. So the speakers, I do welcome you to put your contact information and stuff right underneath your video. And then if people are looking for you and they decide not to be on our email list, they'll be able to find you there. Okay? So with that, let's remove our spotlights and invite anybody who doesn't mind being on YouTube to also turn on their camera. And then we can just thank our speakers. Thank you all of you who came onto this call and are still here. I'm still trying to remove spotlights here. Here we go. Oh, oh, there we go. Everybody, there's still some people left. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you to our speakers. Please feel free to unmute and say anything now. And we'll say goodbye to our YouTube audience. And then we'll stay on for about 5 more minutes if people want to have a wee after party.